That's like you show up to work as an entrepreneur and it's all on you. Like a worker shows up to do their job. Entrepreneur shows up to shovel shit. And you don't know what shit is going to be thrown at you any given day. And we are so lucky to be able to do that work.
Right.
So there's beauty in the struggle of being able to work for yourself, which is why we think it's a love story. It's not only our love story, it's a universal love story.
Right.
Of every entrepreneur has to embrace that love of hard work, that love of uncertainty, that love of getting kicked in the face over and over and over again, knowing that this could go out of business.
Understand that you cannot have pride of ownership of whatever the original business plan is, because the market, the dynamics, your competitors, everything change, right? You could have a crash in the market, which is what we have. So you have to be humble enough as an entrepreneur to be able to pivot.
Welcome to The Win Show with Jimmy Nguyen, me, the podcast where we learn from global leaders how to win in career, business, and life. My goal is to empower the potential of all people to win by being uniquely who you are. On this episode, I am thrilled to welcome, to help us learn how to win, the terrific wife and husband team of Kass and Mike Lazerow. The Lazerows are serial entrepreneurs and investors, known as co-founders of Golf.com, which they sold to Time Warner in 2006, and most notably, Buddy Media. Buddy Media was launched during the early social media boom of the 2000s and became at the time the world's leading social media marketing platform. The Lazerows sold Buddy Media in 2012, that's 12 years ago, to Salesforce for almost $750 million. Since selling Buddy Media, the Lazerows have focused on providing capital and advice to some of the world's most innovative founders. Through their firms, Velvet Sea Ventures and Lazerow Enterprises, Kass and Mike have supported now close to 100 early-stage startup founders and counting. They're also involved with ventures the Merraine Group and the New York Bluebirds. Now they're seeking to help others learn lessons from their journey, so they've written a book to be published hopefully in late 2024, I believe, called Shoveling Shit, a Love Story. No bleeping here needed. The Messy Path to Entrepreneurial Success. And today I'm thrilled to have them as guests to learn about their love story, both personal and entrepreneurial, so that we can help learn experiences to help entrepreneurs and professionals of all types navigate your own messy paths to achieve wins. Kass, Mike, I'm so excited to see you here in New York City, and I haven't seen both of you sitting together in a long time. Thanks for joining me on The Win Show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
I know, so much to talk about, and it's so unusual to be talking to a married couple who are also business partners and entrepreneurs together. So let's talk about just kind of early life. What prompted you to think about being an entrepreneur when you were younger? What sparked the itch? Kass?
I think for me, I was the fourth kid, 5.5 years younger than my closest sibling. And I was alone a lot while my older siblings were doing their own thing. And so I think I learned how to be self-sufficient and kind of get things done on myself. So whether it's starting a company or basically running the interactive arm of a company, I just kind of moved forward.
And where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up in McLean and Arlington, Virginia.
Interesting. Right. Mike,
So
what
we
about
both
you?
grew up in the same area. I was on the Maryland side, which means I didn't visit Virginia. You never crossed the river. And I had great male role models who were entrepreneurs. Different entrepreneurs than who we became. They were money managers, they were real estate entrepreneurs, home inspection business. And I just remember growing up not wanting to sit behind a desk. And so for a lot of us who became entrepreneurs, it really became about freedom, and freedom to control your time, freedom to do what you want to do. We didn't know how hard it was going to be at the time. So it's been a lot of, as we say, shoveling shit since then, but it wasn't about the money. It was about, pursuing a life that we can control our destiny, control our time, control what we do.
And follow your heart, which is the real message of this YouTube video that you posted that's gone viral after you had completed the transaction to sell Buddy Media. I want to ask you about that, Mike, because I'm sure you get asked about it a lot. It's garnered over, I believe, 155,000 views on YouTube, and it's entitled "A New Beginning: Is Fear Holding You Back?"
If I told you the reasons why, would you leave your life and
Holding you back. Tell us about why you posted that video when you signed off on the transaction to sell Buddy Media and what you were trying to convey.
So I was sitting in my office on a Sunday. There's no one there, and we had worked very hard for 20 years. So this was, people look at overnight success stories. There are no overnight success stories.
That's for sure.
It was a 20-year overnight success story, and the office was silent. There was no one there, and I just went into my head, and what I kept feeling was this overwhelming sense of gratitude. First, that I was alive. I have, artificial heart valve. I had my heart rebuilt twice. We went through a lot together, and there were two specific people who didn't make it. One was Ben Breedlove, who also had a heart issue, who died when he was very young, from Austin, Texas. And his story hit me very hard. He put together a video before he died of visions of his death using the same sort of cards that I use. And then Jen Goodman-Lynn, who started Cycle for Survival, who had a many-year battle with cancer, 7 surgeries, 12 chemos, and didn't make it. And I just felt lucky not only to be in the position of a transaction of that size that was going to be generation changing for us, but also just to be alive. And, I look back and there's a high douchebag factor of putting together a video like that. Mm-hmm. I think if I thought about it, I would have never done it. It's hard to actually think about a video like that and put it out there. You just have to do it. I did it. I'm glad I did. And I haven't done another one since, nor will I ever.
I think that's kind of a once in a lifetime message. So one of the key moments in the video is talking about your near death moment and experience when you were 19, because you've had this congenital heart defect your entire life. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment as you can remember it and how it inspired your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so I was in heart failure at 18 months. I don't remember that, obviously, but traumatic for my parents, not necessarily for me. I was relatively asymptomatic my whole life. When I was 19, the hole started to open again, which is not good. You don't want a hole in between your two ventricles. That means unoxygenated blood gets into circulation in your body, and they went in to fix it. When they went in, they found that I had an aortic valve problem. They tried to fix that. Unbeknownst to me, 7 days later, that fix burst. And so I had close to 0 blood pressure, and I happened to be in my doctor's office at the time.
How lucky.
That is
Incredibly
fate.
lucky.
Fate.
He said, get to Georgetown. You needed emergency surgery, Georgetown Hospital. My mom took me there. I was only 19 at the time, and I wasn't feeling great from the first surgery a week before, and they put in a St. Jude's artificial valve. It wasn't for being in that doctor's office. I probably would have died. I had about 3 hours to live, I was told. I feel great now. If I keel over, please call an ambulance.
gosh.
But I think everything is totally asymptomatic, and I've had a totally normal life since.
And then you woke up from that and realized it's time to follow your heart. Right?
Well, I woke up from the surgery, and Rabbi Joe Weinberg from Washington Hebrew congregation was standing over me in a tux. I thought I died again. When your rabbi is looking down on you. It was Saturday night. He was on his way to a bar mitzvah party, and he stopped to see how I was doing. I woke up, and I was a relatively stressed out kid. I wanted to achieve. I wanted to do stuff. And after that, I just chilled out. And I remember thinking I'm on kind of extra innings. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? And that has been my attitude since, which is I'm lucky to be alive and let's make the most of every day. And, that's what Kass and I really have done since with our companies, our kids, our dogs, all the crazy stuff we do.
Yeah, it's affected your mindset. So let's talk, Kass, about how you two met. And was it a love story at first sight, or
No,
much?
I would say
that's typically the truth for most people.
More
right?
kind of like the 10th, 11th site. So I grew up in his house.
Okay. Oh.
So I was best friends with his brother, his older brother, who's my age, and I went over there all the time. That was the house to go to. That's where we all hung out, where we played pool and ping pong. And I would actually take my allowance money, my $10, and give it to his brother Andrew, and he would take money and try to convince and bribe Mike to get out of the basement because he was the annoying little brother. So I grew up with his family, with his parents, and then in 1996, we had a mutual friend's wedding, and it was the Friday of Thanksgiving. I'm thinking to myself, who does that?
Right.
And I was told all the high school friends are going. So I almost didn't go. I almost decided I'll go the next day at the wedding, not the rehearsal. And I drove up, and it was literally just me and Mike that represented all the high school friends. And his brother was the MC for the night and said, I'm going to need you guys to kind of represent, everyone. So can you get up and do a speech? I hadn't talked to him since basically being annoyed with him when he was younger. And we did this incredible speech. And everyone kept coming up to us being like, oh my gosh, how long have you been dating? Everything like that. And we hit it off. We hung out all night. We hung out the next day, and then that was that.
Oh, you looked at him differently as a young adult.
I definitely looked at him differently. I was a little nervous,
Oh.
having a crush on my best friend's little brother.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what were you thinking at the time, Mike?
I was happy that she seemed interested and she was alive. And let's say I wasn't great at dating. And I was young, I was 22. And Kass was really the first woman I'd met. So she was professional, she was interested in work, she was working at a consulting company, and she seemed like she had her shit together. Right. And I was like, whoa. And I've always been attracted, up to then, to strong women, women who are professional, and kind of had their stuff together. And so the next week after that, I flew to the DC area where she was living, and we had a great weekend. And then the rest is really history. A year later, she moved to Chicago, where I was living. I moved out of my apartment where I was living with some college friends who, one was a waiter and the others sell insurance, and one was
There
a
were basically
consultant.
6 guys in an apartment for 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, one of
Typical
them was-
dude apartment,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
One of them was Seth Meyers, who now is a TV show, but at the time he was waiting tables
At the Twisted Lizard.
at the Twisted Lizard in Chicago.
Yep.
Great flautas, if I remember correctly. And I was doing my own company, the U-Wire company, and Kass.
Which is about university press and media.
Yeah, and Kass had ideas for businesses, and really, it was kind of, we didn't talk about it before she met, but we kind of knew that we were going to be doing some stuff together.
So let's talk about that, right?
Okay.
Because I know some other couples who've tried to do business together, whether with established businesses or startup entrepreneurs. What led to you finally deciding, let's start being partners in a startup business? And did you talk about the challenges of that as being a couple and eventually a married couple?
So I think for me, the formula is very simple. Mike and I do not overlap in our skill sets whatsoever. And I think that's the first and foremost thing is that, and we talk about this in our book, when you're picking a co-founder, when you're working with someone, you do not want overlapping skills because that becomes a bottleneck.
And source of conflict.
Yes, conflict, and you'll be paralyzed to make decisions. Everyone's going to have to pee on their corners and everything like that. But knowing Mike and really starting to date him, the thing I love the most about him is his brain. He's so smart and creative and innovative. So I had 100% trust, implicit trust, and he would have been my #1 draft pick for any company that I started.
And what would you say are your separate skill sets that you're best at and you bring to ventures?
So I would say Mike is the visionary, so he can do anything revolving around monetizing the business, revenue models, thinking about product and how consumers look at products and their needs and challenges, and then understanding the marketplace and the industry. I think he's great at that, and knowing when to pivot and not to pivot. I'm more of the details person, and so I'm doing all the operations. So anything from how do you build teams and how do you structure them and move forward, how do you scale, and then the nitty gritty, accounting, finance, legal, HR, and then I'll throw in there another hat, which is marketing. So I have a kind of side hustle with marketing, which I love. And I've learned a lot about it through a good friend of ours over the years.
Now, you're both known for these tech ventures. Neither of you have an engineering, computer science development background. How did you account for that? Because, for a lot of entrepreneurs out there who want to create tech ventures, that's a missing gap. How do you fill that hole? Mike?
Well, we've come a long way. I mean, if you think about where we were with technology before, the generation before us, it was, chips and hardware. And really, our first business was in Web 1.0, which was the internet. It was communications, it was information, it was the free flow of communications all over the world through this connected network. And you didn't need a tech background. I'm a journalism major. And the idea that we could build a business that was kind of the democratization of media was really what drove me to do University Wire. And then together, she recruited me to do golf.com, GolfServe. And then our whole career has been doing stuff that is buildable. Right. So very few times over our career as both investors and entrepreneurs do we see a business plan that isn't buildable, right? Like when someone comes with an app, you're like, yeah, you could build that. Like that can exist. We're not worried about building it. You may need the right engineers, whatever. We now are in a world where we actually need to be better in tech. If you think of AI, if you think of there's real tech risk again in venture, which is a good thing. I think we got a little over our skis and kind of starting businesses that weren't necessarily kind of venture backed as an industry. So do you really need kind of venture capital to do some e-commerce company stuff that, doesn't require the amount of capital that if you're doing a language model, if you're, building out hardcore technology, the new chips for language models, you really need technology.
So, Kass, you mentioned the factors you would choose in choosing a business partner for ventures, a very important topic.
That's right.
What are some of the advantages and disadvantages you've encountered in your experience with Mike in choosing him as a business partner where you also are romantically involved and married and then have a family and kids along the way?
So I think advantages are we have a head start with our relationship, right? So the trust has been there. I think there's a lot of founders who go in either not knowing them very well or being friends with them and not knowing the business side.
Yes.
And then that's where, money, that's where conflicts happen. So I think there's a big, competitive advantage with us because we've worked with each other so well. I think that also helped us with having a family. We kind of looked at it, even though there were a ton of naysayers, a ton.
Yeah. And I believe you told me years ago some venture capital funds would kick you out of the room because you're a married couple.
They would
founder.
just say we'd get all the way there and they'd say we don't invest in anyone who's dating, and we'd say okay and close the laptop and leave within seconds. We weren't going to change anything. So I think that's a big competitive advantage. I think the disadvantages, the only ones I've ever seen, are that we tend to also bring the work home, right? Yes. So again, is it really a disadvantage or is it a competitive advantage that we get more things done in 24 hours than most people because of the trust and the way we work together and the fact that I don't have to write them an email to get an answer. I can just literally in between dinner bites say, what do you think about doing this?
Mike, what's your perspective?
So I love entrepreneurs who start with a co-founder. You could do either way. We write about this in the book, but it's a lonely job being a founder. It's hard. You show up, there's tons of shit to be shoveled, and having a partner is good for just productivity and for mental health. The downside is you give up half the equity. We have hacked that. We get a great founder relationship and we get to keep all the equity within the family. Right. The downside is what Kass said, is sometimes we bring it home. Like last night, for example, we had a long day. We're on the leadership committee at Memorial Sloan Kettering. We had a meeting there. We went out for date night for dinner, and Kass got back and had work to do. I wanted to watch Bridgerton. I like Bridgerton. I put it out there publicly. She had work to do. Okay, so at 9:30 we then watched it, and but I know what she's doing, right? Like, we bring the work home, but it's all for the right reasons, right?
Sure.
We're not doing work that we don't have to do. From my perspective, I couldn't do this without Kass. Like, the visionary, the salesperson, the product person, which I've done more of, needs an operator. Like, there are a lot of great ideas that never get into the world, and Kass is one of the best, if not the best operator I know, and she can get stuff done. And so I never worry about, oh, is that getting done? Like, oh, it's getting done. Like, she'll never hear me like ask her again. Like, I know it'll get done. So there's that trust, and we work together, but we don't work together. People are surprised to hear that, like, I don't see her most days because we both are in our own lanes, and then we come together when we need to, which is really how all, founder relationships should be. Like, you should sit down beforehand and make sure you're on the same page. We talk
right.
about this in the book. Like, what is your vision? How hard are you going to work? What's your relationship with money, right? All these things that you want to get on the same page before you get married, so to speak, if you're co-founders. When you start a business with someone, you're getting married. You may not be having sex with them, but you're talking to them every day, all day, first thing in the morning, last thing before you go to bed. So make sure the dating period really
Sets you
fleshes
up.
out those
Yeah.
those issues.
And that's some really good advice. Really get to know your co-founder, to choose well, have separate, clearly defined lanes about what you're supposed
That's
to
right.
be doing so that you're doing it efficiently and avoiding conflict. And really, you have to learn to trust and empower
That's right.
people. So Kass, you have this phrase that you and Mike use, that you've lived in an imbalanced life,
Mm-hmm.
and especially for you as being a mother during your entrepreneurial journey.
Right.
Tell us what that was like and what advice you would give to people generally, but especially women wanting to pursue the entrepreneurial path.
So for all entrepreneurs, I think there's this glorification of, I'm going to be able to do anything I want. I'll be able to leave the office. The truth is, you will be able to make it to milestones, perhaps, especially if you have a family, but this never turns off.
Right.
You're now even more responsible, more accountable. And if you have a team of people, you feel it. For a mom, and we write about this as well in the book, we made a conscious decision and talked about sacrificing the kids' younger years so that we could get back to them when they needed us more. There's like a secret in parenting that, a lot of people can hold the baby, change the baby, read to the baby, but when they get older, they need you more.
Yes.
And Mike and I took a bet on that, and it paid off for us. But the pain of it is really hard because you are constantly missing something. I missed our last child's first walk. I missed a lot of different games and things. I got to some of the biggest ones. But if you are an entrepreneur, you have to know that your life will not be balanced. And I also say you can only do one thing well at a time.
True. Yeah. That's really good advice. And, our mutual friend, Randy Zuckerberg, has a similar thing. She published a book called Pick 3, right?
Right.
About, especially for professional women, you can't have it all
No,
at
you
once.
can't.
That's a misconception. You have
Yep.
to pick maybe 3 things you
Yep.
can prioritize in your life at once.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your entrepreneur journey so far. You mentioned golfservegolf.com.
Right.
Tell us what inspired the launch of that, what it did, and something about your journey.
So I graduated from college, and I had been on the golf team. I had walked onto the golf team my senior year because of my 2 friends, and they just needed someone to post scores. And there were not a lot of golfers at the time at Dartmouth. And so I learned a lot, and my game got really good. And I come from a very competitive family. I like to compete at pretty much everything I do, and Mike knows that. And I built a spreadsheet right when the spreadsheets were, Excel was coming,
Right.
up in the world. And I tracked all of the different stats with my brother and my dad and Mike. And I would pass the spreadsheets back and forth. This is way before you had Google Sheets where it was collaborative.
No shared files
right. And my
services.
brother and I had gotten really close to the formula, the USGA handicap. And as a public course golfer, there was no way to get a handicap unless you went back to the same public courses at that time. And I said to Mike one day, I know my brother's cheating on these spreadsheets every time he sent them back. And there's got to be a way where I can lock an interface on the internet and we can input our scores. Right. And literally Mike had an idea and basically said, I know what we should do.
Mike, you want to continue the story?
Yeah, so I was working at my other company, but saw what she was doing and said, we really should just build it as a web service, syndicate it to other, 'cause part of the problem with web companies, even at that time, when I started my first internet company, there were only 13 million people on the internet.
Right.
So it's a different time. And so when you talk about how do you get attention and traffic,
eyeballs,
even though there's less competition, there ain't no people, right?
And a lot of them are not golfers necessarily.
Yeah, and so I said, let's launch it, but let's go out to the big sites at the time, which are USA Today and CNN SI and ESPN Go. It used to be called ESPN Go
Yes,
back
I
then.
remember,
And Pointcast, which was this technology that got into the your screensaver and Yahoo. And let's just offer it everywhere. So wherever a golfer came, they would see they could sign up for a handicap and all this instructional content. And that's what we did. She convinced me to join, which wasn't very
another
hard.
competitive advantage that I got to recruit him full time.
Oh, exactly. You're you're mine.
And Kass has great timing often, and her timing of wanting to do a golf business was perfect. Think about young Tiger Woods, wins 8 tournaments in 1999, the year we launched, 9 in 2000, wins the U.S. Open by 15 strokes, has every company in the world. Tiger at the time was bigger than Taylor Swift is now, just to put that into context. And we happen to own the largest golf site on the internet. So timing matters. A lot of these businesses are too early, too late.
Yeah.
And timing is the one thing that if you get right, a lot of good things follow, and it's hard to screw up.
Yeah, I'm seeing that now in the metaverse world, right? Because there's all this talk about metaverse. But really, a lot of the products out there are sort of little advanced iterations of Second Life that you and I remember from decades ago.
Right.
Phil Russell,
but it was a little early for its time. But now it would make total sense. And so you took what was a practical problem you were trying to solve and turn it into a successful business, which is a great tip for all you entrepreneurs out there, because I see so many ventures, just trying to come up with venture ideas, especially with the blockchain and crypto Web3 phase, because they're riding a wave, but they're not really solving a particular problem that people would use.
That's right.
And so how did that get sold to Time Warner?
Well, I think, 2006, we closed the deal. We had been, I would say, limping along a little bit, waiting, because we had the crash, right? And then waiting for the ad business to really bloom again. And it did. And then thanks to Mike, he was beating out all of the other ad buyers. And big companies like the Fortune 500 brands that wanted to reach all the golfers were coming to us. And then eventually Time Inc., who owned Golf Online, wanted us. So it was a
Good
perfect
timing.
fit.
Before we move on to the next company, since you have dealt with building a business that has to compete against bigger players, right? And that's a question I get often asked when I'm advising ventures. Any advice you have to entrepreneurs about how to build a successful revenue and product model when you have to compete against big players, whether it be in digital advertising or any other field?
Most entrepreneurs look at the product and they say, how are we going to build something that's better, that's bigger, that's faster, that's cheaper, whatever the product differential is. And we actually have 6 things that we look at specifically, both as entrepreneurs and as investors, that determine whether or not it makes sense. We call it the go gauge. It's very simple. I mean, we didn't go to business school, but it's kind of common sense. And it comes down to who is the team? Why is the product, what problem is the product solving? Why is it better? What's the size of the market? We could go through all of them. Don't need to go through all of them right now, but it's the distribution piece, which is, I think, the 5th part, which is related to the financials, which is 6. Distribution is key.
Right.
So many great products.
Yeah.
And what Kass did so well at both golf.com and then at Buddy Media, where I think it was, perfected, was the marketing side, the distribution side. How do you get into the hands of customers? And I think that's why we've had a competitive advantage as entrepreneurs. We're not the best engineers. As you said, we're not the best marketers, even though I think we're good. But we know how to build a business that gets distribution. And all of our big wins, it's about distribution. If you look at one of our investments that we absolutely love, Liquid Death, it's water, it's branding, that's what people look at. But it's the fact that it's distributed in every grocery store, every convenience store. That's why it's such a strong business. And every time a entrepreneur comes into our office, and pitches us something, I ask, how are you going to get this into your customers' hands? Now, when you're competing against, it's even more important against the big companies who oftentimes have the distribution. And so you have to have a way to out-distribute them. Or at least you're not going to out-distribute Coca-Cola, right? At least compete for distribution in a meaningful way.
And I think part of that we did because obviously we were going up against some big people with Buddy Media, is you've got to think of perception's reality, right? If you play big, they're going to think you're big. And I think that's what Mike was referring to earlier, is what marketing efforts can you do to get the distribution that you need? And you have to believe it, and you have to, punch up with everything you do.
So let's focus on that, because another lesson for you all: distribution, a key to win, right? A key to achieve wins. When you're trying to establish distribution for a venture like Buddy Media, is it a good idea to find distribution partners? Because that's something I know ventures I work with today are looking for, since you can only do so much marketing.
Right.
But if you're trying to get to consumers, for example, that there's pools of organizations and companies you can partner with, ally with, who have the funnel to the ultimate users you're looking for, that helps. Tell us what you think about that, and then also what Buddy Media was.
So do you want to start with the partners?
Sure. So our focus has really been on more of like B2B selling, so selling stuff to businesses. I think it relates to the consumer side. It's actually, I think, easier on the consumer side because it takes resources, right? It takes, really content in today's world. But on the business side, when we look at kind of distribution, there is the partnership approach, but really the model that we love is, who are your charter customers? So find customers who have a problem. You will help them solve that problem. In exchange, they will provide you feedback and tell you when you are onto solving the problem in the way that works for them. And for us, looking at Buddy Media, we always had a phrase like, what would Debbie say? Debbie Weinstein, now at Google, who was one of the heads of digital marketing at Unilever, who was our client at Unilever. And we basically built it for 2 customers. It was Starwood and Unilever. And when you find a customer who is really tapped into the problem, and it was a big problem. So the Buddy Media problem
What's the problem you solved?
was, you now have a global platform, Facebook, and later YouTube and Instagram and all these other ones, but really we're focused initially on Facebook, that reached the world, hundreds of millions of people on one platform. So how do you handle if someone comes into the Unilever, one of the Unilever pages, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, that's Unilever, right? What content do you show someone if they could be coming in from Colombia, Australia, the US, maybe Florida, speaking Spanish, right? Hispanic marketing is huge for Unilever. And so through Facebook, we could target content based on where they live, what language they speak, and all these psychographics that we could get from Facebook, right? And so really big customers really big companies, so 8 out of the top 10 global marketers used us to target content, paid content, so that your ads, but also your owned content, so you would publish your Facebook feed, and earned, because that's the virality, right? Birds of a feather flock together. If it's good content, it'll be shared. And our system was a system of choice to handle all of your social content and marketing for the largest companies in the world. We were one of the fastest growing companies to 50 million in sales. It took us 3 years from the time we started selling the product, and it was on the back of this product that Debbie Weinstein had her problem of, how do I target content for 100 brands in 100 languages in every country in the world but North Korea and Iraq?
Right. Without hiring an army of 1,000.
And also
Exactly.
realizing that she had a huge team that all spoke different languages that were all around the world. So there was a whole permissions, like a permissioning aspect to our platform, which was great. And
it was hot. Like, if you think about social media, I mean, right now we talk about social media and we talk about all of the stuff it's done to the world, right?
Right.
Like, it's ruined democracy. And
Now
mental
people are
health
talking
and
about the
all this.
annoyances
Yeah.
of social media.
Yeah, but at the time,
Right.
it
was
was
exciting.
hotter than AI.
Yeah.
The amount of money, we had 100 funded
I
competitors. Every marketer needed a Facebook strategy. And we were there solving the problem of, how do you communicate with consumers on this global platform for the first time? It wasn't like the Washington Post, New York Times. It was just like, your readership. It was, you're communicating to civilization, which is why they would spend on average $60,000 per brand on the software.
And so when Mike's saying that we thought about Debbie, what he's also saying is that company became our biggest advocate, right? They became a referral source.
Right.
And that really helped hugely increase our distribution. And on the back of that, we created those ads that Mike talked about. 8 out of the 10 top, brands use our platform. And that was an eye-opening experience, because as people traveled the country, we did a literal print campaign, advertisements in the airport, which was not done, right? Print campaigns were not done anymore. And I took a bet that if I could say this message, which is exactly what was happening with us, that 8 of the 10 top, Fortune 500 companies were working with us to reach their consumers on Facebook, everyone else should too. I put it up between Thanksgiving and January, knowing that they were going to be traveling, right?
Holiday
and
travel.
so all of the big major hubs, you saw these incredible, beautiful ads. And then we also partnered with all the different magazines, Ad Age, and ran the same ads. So you talked about distribution. It's definitely have someone who can be your advocate and also give you the feedback on the product, because that was really important. And we could literally start to see the different minute issues that we had to solve for each, customer coming down the pike, and play bigger, right? Go
And
big.
there could
Go
be,
big, get a big partner. But I think it all stems from the first step, which is you, again, developed a product and venture that was designed to solve a problem
Right.
for a real world user
Right.
that was willing to pay for it.
Right.
Right. And then by doing so, you won a very strong endorser advocate in
Right.
Unilever, which then opened up lots of distribution
Right.
opportunities for you. Yeah. What were some of the messes that you had to shovel along the way at Buddy Media, and what lessons have you learned from that?
well, Buddy Media went very well. We have invested in 100 companies. We've been involved with a lot. And Buddy Media was kind of up and to the right. And our issues were the issues you want, which was, are the right people in the right positions? Do we have to up-level employees? How do we build culture that sticks when you're adding 75 new employees, every year, starting at like 10, right? So you're doubling every year. We had 7 offices at one point because we were outstripping offices. It's why we raised $100 million, right? $100 million solves a lot of problems. We also have run out of money at golf.com, and we thought we were on top of the world. We went to sell the business, and we sold it. And the company that bought it, chipshot.com, was backed by Sequoia. They're supposed to go public in 2000. Then the great crash of April 2000 comes. We get that call of, oh, by the way, we can no longer stay in business without funding, and we buy it back
And started over.
and start it over. And we've seen across our investments really every problem there you could imagine, from bank accounts being frozen because a majority shareholder is put on the sanctions list, to legal issues. And that's like, you show up to work as an entrepreneur and it's all on you. Like, a worker shows up to do their job. Entrepreneur shows up to shovel shit. And you don't know what shit is going to be thrown at you any given day. And we are so lucky to be able to do that work.
Right.
So there's beauty in the struggle of being able to work for yourself, which is why we think it's a love story. It's not only our love story, it's a universal love story of every entrepreneur has to embrace that love of hard work, that love of uncertainty, that love of getting kicked in the face over and over and over again, knowing that this could go out of business, knowing that your reputation is going to be dragged through the mud as you have to declare bankruptcy. And we think that it's a privilege to do that, and we take it very seriously, because the second you take someone's money, you have a responsibility to deliver the best you can, not to deliver returns, because the only thing you could do is do the right thing every day, every week, every quarter, every year, and it still may not work out, but you have to try to do the right things every day to see the outcome that you want for you, your family, your investors, your employees.
So wouldn't you agree, though, like one of the pivotal moments was when we did have to pivot our business model?
Oh, yeah, that's a good, important
I mean,
topic,
I
because
think
this
that
happens
was
to a lot of ventures.
when
Why did you have to pivot?
Right. I mean, I think...
Oh, yeah, I skipped over
Like
the
a
three
big-
business models that didn't work at Buddy.
I think another thing that entrepreneurs need to know is what they start with will rarely be what they end with.
Yes,
Right?
very
So
important.
that's a big point here, right? Is to understand that you cannot have pride of ownership of whatever the original business plan is, because the market, the dynamics, your competitors, everything change, right? You could have a crash in the market, which is what we have. So you have to be humble enough as an entrepreneur to be able to pivot. And we had to do so, I think it was 3 or 4 times. Mike, why don't you talk about the biggest one?
Which is why I kind of forget about it often, because they were all my ideas. It sucked. So Buddy Media launched with a product called Ace Bucks,
It's cringeworthy.
which was the single worst idea I've ever come up with, which somehow got through Kass's filter. So it's not all my fault.
I just had Viv. That's.
I'm just saying it somehow got through. I didn't say there wasn't a reason for getting through it, but
But it's important to know that even the most successful entrepreneurs have ideas that you look back in hindsight and say, well, that was crap.
so I mean,
Right?
we did,
and that's
like,
okay.
We did Ace Bucks, which was this web-wide loyalty program on the back of Facebook, which is so stupid. We then did custom apps for brands, which didn't scale, and finally we launched the Facebook page management system, which was software. But we wouldn't have called the company Buddy Media if we thought we'd be a software company. Right? It's kind of like not the right name.
Right.
As we looked into pivots, looking back, pretty much every company you know that's great has pivoted. So think about like just Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix.
Oh,
Like-
Netflix
classic
is a
example.
Great
Like,
example.
Blockbuster didn't pivot.
Correct.
They went out of business. Netflix would have gone out of business if they hadn't gone from DVD to online streaming.
Yeah. And now production studio
Right?
of their own.
Totally.
On top of
Now
that,
they're
right?
doing, and so you look at like BMW, like they're making airplane engines, right? They didn't have this concept of
yeah.
a sedan.
Yeah. You would not have Bridgerton otherwise.
Bridgerton, you're right. I'm never gonna be. You're never gonna let me live that down. I like the show. It's like, maybe I want to go back and live in that time. But great businesses never, like Sony. I'm looking at the Sony cameras in here.
Yeah.
Like they'd be the best rice cooker like company in the world. That was their first product.
I know.
That maybe is like.
And trust me, I know a good rice cooker when I use one.
So do we, but it's like, maybe what is that?
Right.
$200 million
Yeah.
market, billion-dollar market. Now they're
Much bigger, much bigger.
ridiculous because they
But
pivoted.
I think you said something else too, which I think is an interesting point about being an entrepreneur. So we had to pivot. When we originally started the company, the only way to get engineers back then in 2007 was to buy them, literally buy whatever they were working on. So we had partnered with one of these engineers. We had to buy his apps. And he had a couple URLs, and one of them was Buddy Media.
That's a good name.
We didn't like it because I could see, and again, we often used the help of our good friend Catherine Bateman, who's this great brand marketer. We both could tell like it might constrict us some, the media
Sure.
name
The
in
media
it,
part,
right?
yeah. Mhm.
And so we didn't love it, but we could get the URL. It was an easy URL, and we came up with the tagline, "Every brand needs a buddy," which worked. And we spent, people wanted, you wouldn't believe, in the 5 years, how many people said, this mark, this name, you should change it. No, don't spend your time on that.
Yeah.
Protect the hell out of your brand.
Correct. Yeah.
and move forward and get the market share.
Yeah.
And I think that's another lesson that entrepreneurs need to know. It's not about the identity; it's about protecting the identity.
Got it. Very good point for the win. So let's talk about things you're investing in supporting now. Since the sale of Buddy Media, I can't believe it was almost 12 years ago. And I met you, when you were still building Buddy Media.
Right.
So that seems like a long time ago. And I can't believe it. I really read that. I mean, it's been 12 years since you sold it because I remember this
Yep.
moment. What have you been doing since, and what are some current projects that you're excited to talk about?
So there are two sides really of our business. Ventures where we've spent the most time, and we have invested personally in many deals going back to, I think, 2009.
Right.
Facebook was one of our early investments, companies like Tumblr. And then we launched a firm, Velvet Sea Ventures, which we've had a great run with, and we continue to support entrepreneurs. Those are growth, highly liquid. Some will go out of business. We try to lend our expertise and kind of going from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 2, and then Kass, can take it all the way. On the other side are more control investments and stuff that generates cash. We love businesses, and what we realized was we don't have to reinvent the future in every one of our businesses. Right. So we recently bought the majority control of one of the top healthcare staffing firms, which combines two of our passions, which is healthcare and building high-performance teams.
Right.
A company called Merraine Group, and we're really excited that we've partnered with the founder of that, David, who's built it for 20 years, and we think we can build it to even higher heights. We jumped on the opportunity to own the New York Bluebirds, which is
Go Birds!
Go Birds, which is a new golf league in the Grass League, league, which is a par 3, high stakes, under the lights golf event. I think we vowed never to do golf again after golf.com, but golf is having a new life.
Right.
Over half of all golf and golf activity is off course, off traditional course. It's top golf and mini golf. This is 18 holes, par 3, so no driver. Anyone can be Scotty Scheffler if you don't have a driver, right? You don't have to hit it 350 yards. And it's just a better format.
It's just so much more fun to watch. and
Every
exciting.
shot is an
Can drive
exciting
more
shot.
participation and inclusivity,
Right.
which is
Built
a
for
huge
TV.
push in
Right.
sports too right now.
We
Yeah.
also just invested in the New Jersey Fives pickleball team.
Okay,
So-
so you're into pickleball.
We
now, too,
love
yeah.
pickleball.
Cass is an
Pickleball.
awesome
Do you
pickleball
play?
player.
Yes,
Okay,
Mike's pretty good too.
I have
And-
cross eyes. I whiff a lot. I try
He
my
does.
best, but Cass is,
Well, I had an advantage. I played tennis.
she's what they
and-
call good at the sport. I wouldn't say that about myself.
But we also, I will say, despite Mike making fun of himself there, we also see sports as a big avenue for investment. Sports is entertainment, and we've invested in slam ball,
Okay.
which is really unbelievably crazy and fun.
Basketball
and entertaining.
meets football and a trampoline.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
We don't play it. Very dangerous. I'm on blood thinner.
And you mentioned Liquid Death earlier. Tell us about Liquid Death, because I love the name, first of all, for those of you who don't know what Liquid Death is and why you should drink it.
Exactly.
Well, Liquid Death has proprietary technology to murder your thirst. It's water. And the water is actually great water, but it is marketed, it's a wellness product that's marketed aggressively like everything that's bad for you. So if you think of what great marketing is, Doritos and Skittles and Bud Light and all these, they're really shitty for you. And so Mike Cesario, who's the founder, came up with this concept of why can't we do great marketing for stuff that's good for you? And like every great brands, half the people love it, half the people hate it. Sure. And they've been able to, far exceed our expectations of how, far the brand could spread, how much distribution it could make. And so now it's not just still water, it's sparkling, it's, 5 flavors. There's iced teas, which I love, only 20 calories, a splash of agave, which gives it a little sweetener, but it's not like syrup like the competitors. And like many things in life, it shouldn't exist, but it's fun and people love it.
And he is by far and away the best marketer. I haven't seen good marketing like this since American Girl Dog.
Wow. American Girl.
I mean,
Yeah, so we
that
did the
is a
seed.
trap.
We did the seed investment, and then as a firm, we've done venture investments because, every company is a tech company and it's using kind of data and, all of the modern tools to grow a brand. And even before it launched, it tested 5,000 or 1,000 different brands on Instagram to see what would get the best reaction.
And the name Liquid Death
It's a great name.
won.
Yeah, and first time I saw it, I thought it was great, and thank my friends at Science Incubator in Santa Monica. It was really Peter Pham, who's done an incredible job with the company, supporting the company.
And Mike Cesario also had the concept that as alcohol consumption is going down right now, how do you make being healthy cooler? And if you think about all the festivals, if young people are going into bars, drinking a bottled water wasn't really it.
Right.
So this makes you look cool, right? And I think
aluminum is
is
it's infinitely
recycled.
recyclable,
Right.
Sustainable.
and there is, which I think gets lost sometimes in the brand, but it was started out of this idea that we have to get plastic out of the oceans.
Yeah.
Like we can't just be producing water in plastic bottles. And, ideally everyone's carrying around water bottles like we do, but at the end of the day, that's just not going to happen. And so consumables are here to stay, and we think it's going to be a exciting CPG company for many years because of the brand foundation it has, and it
And
can
the
sell
following.
across
and it's got a
multiple
cult
categories.
following.
For sure. And Mike, I know you've taken an interest in the NFT and blockchain space and done some investments in that space. How's that going?
Okay, I'd like
I know NFTs are.
I like this
topic.
interview until no. I mean, listen,
They've had a weird.
we're convicted in our
Wave.
thinking,
Yeah.
and we have a thesis
Yes.
that is that digital things are important to our lives, and digital ownership, the ownership of digital things, will be something that exists. Now it's
Correct.
going to start in gaming. It's going to start in certain areas that is just a no-brainer, right? Rather than renting your items from a platform, just owning them and being able to take them with you wherever you're playing the games. And we have some exciting investments there. So Pixel Vault, which owns Wolf Game and Battle Plan, we're super excited about that, and we're on the board, the operating committee there. We think Collectibles is an area where, like, the idea that this is a digital collectible, like, why does it matter that it's physical versus digital? You're just putting it up on your wall, and and really what NFTs let you do is trade stories, trade memes, right? And that, it's been a brutal market outside of a few assets like CryptoPunks, which I own, and some others. But there's just no doubt in our mind that digital ownership is here to stay. What form will evolve?
I
So we're
agree
so
with you.
excited about the market.
I absolutely agree with you. I think NFTs got derailed for a while by people getting confused as to, well, what should an NFT be, and all these kind of what I would call manufactured uniqueness of cartoons and images got created just to make money fast. And the market is settling down, as it often does, so that now the ventures I talk to are trying to find more meaningful NFTs to create. So I think I absolutely agree there is a world for them out there, and the shakeouts happen to hopefully get the better projects going forward. In our remaining time, I want to talk about some lessons you can give to our audience from your experience and from your book about how to achieve wins and wade through these messes and the shoveling of shit, as you say. Now that you're sitting in the shoes of investors or supporters of ventures, how can you tell from founders when you meet them whether they have what it takes to win or not?
I think when I go in and I start doing the due diligence for our deals, I often want to meet with every single founder, every single person on the management team or leadership team. And my goal is to see if they know what they don't know. I know what they will know because they're going to be talking about it, right? And that's going to be in their pitch, in their deck, how they answer questions. But I'm really interested, are they aware enough to realize that they need to surround themselves with people who fill in their gaps, right? And are they, are they nervous about people who could be smarter than they are on their team? And if that's the case, we often don't invest. We want someone to realize that they're not going to know everything. and they're gonna build that team that can scale and move them forward.
And Mike, in your upcoming book, it's going to offer over 50 lessons on learning while shoveling the shit in your entrepreneur journey. Can you give us a preview of a couple of the top lessons?
Yeah, I think so. We cover every part of the entrepreneur journey, but this is not a how-to guide. This is really an ode to entrepreneurship told through our stories. We happen to have made a lot of mistakes and gotten some things right. And so we have some lessons, which, as we say, we wish we knew them earlier. And so 5.3 million businesses started last year. I hope every one of them buys the book, not only because it would be a bestseller, but more importantly, it would short circuit them from like making these mistakes, right? It would help get them to a better place. It starts with the founder. Like, are you going to be a solo entrepreneur or a co-founder? If you're going to be a co-founder, do the work up front.
Right.
And that is get on the same page about roles and responsibilities and your life vision with your co-founder. Like, are they going to, people don't realize that Salesforce had 4 founders. Mark Benioff is known.
Right.
Parker is still there. There are 2 who are no longer there because they didn't want to be a part of a bigger company. And so they had to transition out. And then it goes to, can you moneyball and hire the right people for the right things? And I think where these companies, or a lot of companies, get in trouble is in recruiting. Can't get the right people into the right roles.
Or, may I interrupt and say, or they've inflated the titles of all their friends around them, and they don't really understand how to move the team forward, right? So it's moneyballing. It's also, like I like to say, putting the cult in your culture, is creating that environment that really allows people to both stay there and also attract other people that come. We had, I think it was 1 year, we had 75% of our new employees came from referrals inside. Because as Mike said earlier, if you're happy at work or happier at work, you'll tend to tell other people about it, right? So there are lessons throughout. We talked about some of the marketing lessons. We talked about the go gauge and how you decide if you should green light your business.
Yeah, let's mention that for a second. Apparently you list in your book several questions to ask to decide, I've got an idea, should I green light it?
Right.
What are a couple of questions to ask?
So it's, what is the product, right? What is it that you're selling? How are you going to market it and get it to consumers, right? We talked a little bit about distribution, right? We talked about marketing. You've got to understand your financial model. So what are the unit economics? That's got to make sense. Not every founder is going to be the best at, doing financial models. I don't think that's what any of us look at. I think it's about knowing, do you know what it costs? Like the unit economics of your product.
We call it passing the smell test.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, we're not business school grads. There are plenty of accountants. There are plenty of people who can do a model. But does this make sense, the financial model? Can you explain it? So if you're a coffee company, what are you buying the beans for? What's it going to cost you to distribute it? And is there money left over? Right?
Right.
And that's where,
profit?
Right.
And if you look at a lot of these businesses that go out of business, you realize no one ever paid attention to that. And that means it was never a business.
Right.
Do it as a nonprofit, right? A lot of great things that need to exist can happen if it gets the right funding. I think 2 big lessons. We've never seen a huge company being built in a small market. So the market that you pick to operate in, both today's market and what's going to happen in the future, like what you think is going to happen, that is so much more important than what the product actually does. You find a big enough market, you'll talk to enough customers, you'll get there. But a lot of companies get stuck because there's no market.
That's right.
Excellent point.
And the other one is, we talk a lot about feeding the baby, right? We had a lot of our babies. We only had 3 babies, but we had them around the time we started the companies. And you have to know how to raise money, when to raise money, who to raise money from, and get really good at asking for money, which is really uncomfortable. When we started, we were oh, maybe you could give us. And by the end, it's like, oh, we're going to give you the best opportunity that you've ever
And I
seen in
think
your life,
one
right?
of the rules that Mike did very well was ABF, right? Always be fundraising. So even though we might have closed $50 million round, he's already starting the networking for the next round. There's never a time where he wasn't fundraising.
Which is both important, tiresome sometimes,
Yes.
but very important. So to wrap up with a few last questions, I loved the statement on your website that you have now that your love story is boy meets girl, and you build the life of your dreams after overcoming countless obstacles along the way. But it's also a universal story about the mindset needed to build something truly worthwhile. Not
Right.
just to make money fast
Right.
or do something. What do you think is the mindset that people watching need to figure out how they can build something that's truly worthwhile for them, that's a win for them?
I think it starts with purpose. And I think there needs to be a connection of the entrepreneurs to whatever it is they are building, right? Whatever it is they're selling. If you don't feel that connection of purpose, like this is solving something, I think it kind of falls flat, right? And so we kind of believe that entrepreneurs, when you're shoveling the shit, when you have this struggle constantly, you fall in love with that, right? And the ones that do really fall in love with the shovel, with the shoveling, right? So that's kind of my perspective. Mike, what would you say?
I think what we've come to realize is that a lot of entrepreneurs at the end of the day love helping people. And so you used to be a very high-powered lawyer, right? I think you're touching a lot more people right now, and that you're trying to, and that is kind of giving you a purpose of helping
It's
in
what
your
my
business.
heart cares about
Right.
more.
Yeah, and I think that there's some lawyers who feel like that is how I help people, right? Like when we met you, we knew you could help a lot more people than just your clients, right? Who were paying $2,000 an hour or whatever they were paying, maybe more. I don't know. You're I know, in demand. But there are, accountants, lawyers, people who that is their life's work, and they're entrepreneurs helping people. And I think that the power of helping is a great motivator for entrepreneurs, and that will keep them shoveling at a time when it's just not easy, but knowing that they're helping people out, that they have employees who are going to do better because of them.
I also think it goes to, we meet a lot of entrepreneurs who are singularly focused on the outcome. And I think the ones that actually do very well are thinking about the outcome and what that could do for others, right? There's right, again, the purpose. For Mike and me, we've always had philanthropy, right? Giving back as one of our tenets, our core values in all the companies. And so having this incredible exit has only amplified that. And so I think when you look at what kind of mindset does a entrepreneur need to have, they need to understand that it's bigger than just that company.
Mike, you love this Gandhi quote. The enemy is fear. We think it's hate, but it is fear.
Well, fear fucks us up. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's all sorts of fear, like fear of what your parents are going to think, fear of what friends are going to think. Some fear is good. Like, I don't like sharks. I can't really outswim them, but some fears like fight or flight, but most fear is kind of like the imaginary boogeyman that get us into bad places. I talk about this in one of my talks about how there are thousands of people who were scared of flying after 9/11 who drove and got in an accident and died. Right? So the fear of flying then drove you to your death. That is a metaphor for a lot of things where you didn't do things. And I think back in my life and I constantly ask myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen if I ask Kass to dance at the wedding? What's the worst thing that can happen if I start this business? What's the worst thing that can happen? Sometimes it's really bad and I don't do it, right? I've never skydived. I've never, friend just went hella skiing. I'm like, you're stupid. You've
Don't
kids.
you think this also applies to when we were pivoting? And we see this a lot with entrepreneurs, and in the investments we've made.
Well, most importantly, in business,
yeah.
Because there's this gut feel you get that even if the numbers aren't there, you're like, oh, this isn't going to work out. I've talked to 50 potential customers, and they all just think I'm crazy. in your gut, you have to pivot, but you're like, well, what are investors going to say? I've hired these
It's that
people.
pride
Like, how can
again.
I'm gonna have to lay those people off? Like, they have families. Like, I can't do that. But if you tap into like, oh, this isn't working out, I gotta get rid of my employees. I gotta get like a new product built, blah blah blah, and get over that fear. Then you're fired up. You're like, I tapped into it. And so I think fear, like, it is really debilitating, and it's hard.
And
It's hard for me. It's
unproductive.
hard for a lot of entrepreneurs. And then when you get on the other side of the fear, you're like, it's not too bad. Like, that was good. I'm glad I did it.
All right, last question. And this goes back to your quite renowned YouTube video, Mike, in which you wrote on cards that I feel lucky to be alive, lucky to have a healthy heart, and lucky to have followed it. Now that you're at this stage of your lives and careers, what are the things you want to do to follow your heart? And what are the things you're teaching your young adult 3 children now to do to follow their heart so that they hopefully can win in their lives?
I think, again, we're going to go back to giving, right? I think what we try to do as parents and as entrepreneurs is lead by example. And so I think that what we want to instill in our kids, and what I know that they see us, is always giving back to our friends, our community, the community in which they live. That's just really important. I also think they see us laughing, right? I think laughter, care, giving back is immensely important, and we try to follow that. We also are much more healthy now. I will say that being entrepreneurs, here's another lesson. It's very hard to be healthy. You're going to be working around the clock, but we are committed to it now. So I think that's one of the things that we also show our kids, and also hopefully can tell entrepreneurs that they've got to focus on being healthy while they're running the company. It's very hard to do.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think life, what matters is, like, there's virtue in hard work. There's virtue in time with very good friends and family. There is tons of virtue in experiences.
Like fish.
Like the band, I like the band
Yes.
Fish. We don't have to talk about that.
I know.
Kass doesn't, whatever.
Yes.
But the point is, like, at some point, we're going to look back and be like, was that worth it? Right? Like, this conversation with you was worth it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we'll look back and be like, that was worth it. How many of the things that you're doing every day are worth it? And if you don't find purpose in your job, which a lot of people don't, which I encourage them to look at other options like entrepreneurship, you're going to look back and have a lot of regrets. And so we spend most of our time now doing stuff that we want, and doing stuff that, hopefully models the right behavior to our grown people who kind of still are around our house every now and then.
You're talking about our children, right?
Our children
Just
who
making
are,
sure that
who are
that we're-
22, 20, and 17.
Children, they do love you.
Yeah, no, but like, it's not, and we don't talk about legacy, but at the end of the day, it's like, do your siblings like you? Do your parents like you? Do your kids like you? And have you helped people along the way? And so when Kass says help out, we're not talking about financially exclusively, even though that's part of it. Sure. She's mentoring young women entrepreneurs every day. I walked into her office the other day. She was mentoring a young Babson student who was taking recycling computers from
for
companies
people.
and giving them to people who couldn't afford them, right? And so I think, and as you make money, time becomes your most valuable asset.
Correct.
When you're young, it's like, oh, I only have $1,000. Like, that's pretty, like, I'm not going to spend it. That's valuable to me. But now it's time. And that investment of time can compound with experience and with, everything that you've done, because, you're hopefully better at giving out advice and, spending time. And we like having fun. Like, I think there were years where we didn't have fun because it was
you've
work,
you've 3 kids. Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, give up fun for 5 years.
Well, you, Kass, and Mike Lazerow are 2 of the most fun people I know in the tech world and just life in general. And now they are the authors of Shoveling Shit, a love story, the messy path to entrepreneurial success. How can readers get this book when it comes out?
Well, if they'd like to go to kassandmike.com, they can sign up right now to be notified when it's coming out.
Kassandmike.com. That's Kass with a K, Kass and AND Mike MIKE.com.
Yes, thank you. So that would be great.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to reading the story, even though I know a lot of the story. And I want to thank you for sharing this love story, which continues. It's not over. I'm actually really excited to see what you do in this next chapter. I find myself, even though I've had several big professional chapters, that I feel like I'm just getting started.
I know, right?
Yeah. And so I think you two are just getting started.
Well, with Mike being 50 now, welcome to our decade, by the way.
Thank
honey.
you. Well,
Yes,
yeah,
thank
we're all,
you.
yes, we're all, thank you. You're in our
I feel like
decade.
the 50s
Not
are
supposed to
really
be
great,
terrible,
right?
Exactly. I'm 51. I'm turning 52
Right,
this
it's
year.
like
and-
energy, right?
Yeah. You
You
Energizing.
two look great. I somehow got all the gray, but
It's all right.
I feel great.
What can you do?
About feeling good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time here in New York
Thank
City.
you.
I'm glad I got to see you and
Thanks
do
for
this in
having us.
person. For joining us on the Win Show. Please check out everything about Kass and Mike Lazerow. They are two of the most impressive, heartfelt people I know. And check out that book by signing up for some pre-notices about it at kassandmike.com. This is Jimmy Nguyen, and it's been another episode of the Win Show. I hope you've learned some powerful lessons from these two fine entrepreneurs about how you can achieve wins in your life and follow your heart.